cozy chair and sit back because it's going to be interesting with Les. We got him for another half an hour after the top of the hour. You're listening to me, Gary, on Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Maggot was a biker and he drove his motorcycle very fast. Drove a big chop Harley with a gang color jacket and ran down citizens for laughs. He had an old lady named Petula who packed an automatic 45 gun. They had just come up from California where they'd shot 6 cops for fun. Jake, he thought it was the best there was, was down the interstate he saw, till the day he tangled with the county sheriff who they all called 104. It was late on a Thursday evening, and Jake, he was feeling kinda mean, cause he just run out of his favorite drug, you know, the one called amphetamine. So he sauntered up to Petula, and he said, say, baby, let's split. There's a little gas station on down the road that might be fun to hit. So they drove up to the station, and they both jumped off of Jake's ride. They were up to derision at Jake's decision as they both saw to the inside. The attendant, he was an old man, and you know he didn't think it very funny. When Petula pulled out that great big gun, said, honey, give me all your money. Well, the old man opened up the cash drawer, and Jake grabbed the money and ran. With Petula out the door to the big chop Harley that was parked on the center kickstand. Then they headed out for the 4-lane, and they thought it was lots of fun. With Jake on his hog, with Petula the dog, with the automatic 45 gun. He thought it was the best there was down the interstate he saw, till the day he tangled with the county sheriff who they all called 104. Didn't think it very humorous, and you know he didn't like to get sassed, cause just that morning he had a cup of coffee with a cop named Pendergrast. But the old man had a lot of sense, and he knew just exactly what to do. He dropped a dime in the phone till he got the dial tone, and he talked to operator 42. Operator 42, she was the best, and she gave out the description of Jake the maggot with the gang colors jacket and Petula with the 45 gun. Now it just so happens that Jake, he was headed for 522, where 104 was popped in the shade thinking, baby, I'm waiting for you. Jake laughed.
Night Dreams Talk Radio, After Dark, wants to give a big shout out to all the truckers that listen to our show. Night Dreams Talk Radio Network brings you the World Paranormal News with James Creechbaum. Now, the latest news.
I'm James Creechbaum with the Paranormal and World Changes News. Shocking study finds moon could short-circuit astronauts. Moon, it turns out that shuffling across the lunar surface can generate similar sparks that could fry components which are far more costly and potentially life-threatening. Will static electricity stop space travel? Only time will tell. Today marks the anniversary of the Rendlesham Forest incident. England holds one of the most compelling UFO landing accounts. In late December of 1980, an invasion of unidentified flying objects over a period of several nights took place in the joint air bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge, situated within the vast Rendlesham Forest in late December. Next, a 2,000-year-old well-preserved alien-looking mummy was discovered inside a pyramid. Now, this 2,000-year-old well-preserved alien-looking mummy is discovered inside a pyramid in Egypt, and the very well-preserved alien mummy has been discovered, and it's believed to be between 4'8" and 5 feet tall, and more will come out on that, I'm sure. Also, a real-life Pennywise faces jail time in the Ukraine. Yep. Yeah. A notorious prankster who has been terrifying random passersby is now facing up to 5 years imprisonment. Since December 9th, a person dressed up as Pennywise and the dancing clown from the recent movies from Stephen King horror movie has been terrorizing motorists. He has been caught and faces up to 5 years for doing so. A Maya palace emerges from the Yucatan jungle. Researchers from the National Institute of Anthropology and History have confirmed the finding of an impressive Maya palace in the archaeological zone of Cululuba in the Yucatan. A 55-meter structure is being excavated and conserved together with 4 other buildings in the pre-Hispanic Maya city, which is regaining some of its former splendor thanks to the experts that are working on this. Strange anomalies caught flying through space. 2 unknown anomalies have been caught on camera while flying through space. Now, both anomalies would have been invisible to the human eye. One individual who captured the objects respectively on December 18th and the 21st of this year believes that the anomalies could be cloaked spaceships, referring to the TikTok anomalies, since several files associated with these anomalies support this assumption. The next news break at the top of the hour.
You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark with our host, Gary Anderson.
And we are back with our guest, Les Odell. And hey, Les, what other type of cryptic reports are you getting? Is that pretty much it? How about UFOs and alien reports or anything like that?
I get a handful. I've got a handful. Most of them were just normal lights in the sky. No aliens. Creature themselves have been seen that I've got. But maybe the lights or an unusual craft in the sky. The most interesting one I got was an odd shape. It was during the daylight. It was an odd shape. I don't know how to describe the craft. It almost looked like 2 cylinders connected in the middle, almost like a figure 8. By the picture that I had seen and I had analyzed, and a fellow that I know, kind of, I don't want to say embellished the pictures, but he made a 3D rendering of what he thought it could have been, and that was near the Green Bank Observatory in here in West Virginia, which is an extremely large radio antenna that we have.
Interesting.
That's one of the most memorable one that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Well, we get a lot of, we've had a lot of guests on, that have claimed they've been abducted by aliens. We get a lot of reports of UFOs. Yeah, I've been doing this, Les, since 1976 when I first started getting on radio and doing talk shows. That tells you how old I am. You're young. But I can tell you this. The reports I used to get of UFOs, they were like, 25 feet around, 50, sometimes like 100 feet around. Now people are, claiming that they're seeing, UFOs the size of Walmart stores. That's huge. And the triangles. A late friend of mine who's no longer around is Art Bell. And, he was a skeptic. I mean, he had his talk show, he interviewed a lot of people about UFOs. But he would tell me off the side, he didn't believe in UFOs at all. Mm-hmm. Till him and Ramona both saw a UFO off their deck. And it kind of went overhead. And it didn't make a sound. And it went really slow. And then it took off real fast and it was gone. That got him convinced that, yes, UFOs exist. But the reports now are being huge. Are you hearing anything like that?
Not directly, but I have heard of a couple. I believe it was in Kanawha County. There were some workers at a mine preparation plant, if I remember right. They talked about seeing a very large, either one or two, I don't remember for sure, very large triangular shaped craft. They said that basically blacked out all the stars they could see. That I do remember hearing that one. I did investigate a case here actually in September. It wasn't a large craft. It was a fellow. He was just across the state line in Ohio, right outside of actually, oddly enough, Gallipolis, Ohio, which is right across from the river from Point Pleasant. And him and his wife were at a campground, and he said they were just out sitting outside, looking at the stars and enjoying a campfire and listening to the coyotes and just sitting around. He was an older fellow. He said, I believe he told me he's in his 70s. He's retired from the Navy, I believe it was. Also retired police. He wasn't an officer. He was an investigator in the 70s and 80s. He told me he worked for a certain person in Pennsylvania, and his job was to put bad cops in prison. So he was an undercover agent, basically. So he told me, he said, I'm well versed in observing things, the things around me. So he said, we're sitting there watching this fire, or having a fire, and he started noticing, aircraft going across in the sky above him. And he had a flashlight. He said that had a strobe feature on it, and he's flashing at this aircraft. And his wife's like, you're going to get in trouble for that. He's, I'm 70 some years old. What are they going to do to me? He said that's when he noticed one of the aircraft stopped. It came down across the valley. He said because where he was at, there was a valley in front of him. It came down on the other side of the tree line, came up over the tree line, went down through the valley. He said I could see it. It was like a large white, or large, he said white, brilliant white. He said it didn't emit light, but it was contained. This light was contained in this object. He said, at first I thought, somebody's got a drone or something like that. He said, but it was way too large. It came across the valley. And he said, the one thing I did notice, he said, because they were listening to the coyotes and everything, he said, all the sound. He said, there was no sound. He said, I remember nothing. He said, I don't remember hearing the coyotes. He said, I didn't remember hearing the other nature sounds. And his wife had gotten up and went into their camper. And he said, this thing came across the valley, come up and stayed. It was at eye level with him about, I'm looking at my notes. I think he said about 25 to 30 yards away. And he was staring at this, he said, a craft, but it was just a brilliant white shape. And he said, I had a gun laying with me. He said, because I always had my gun. He said, for some reason, he said, I couldn't even grab my gun. He said, it was like I was frozen. He said, I wanted to grab it. He said, I wanted to shoot at this thing. He said, I'm scared to death. I wanted to shoot at him, but I couldn't even grab my gun. He said, to this day, he said, I cannot figure out why I couldn't pick my gun up. He said, I wanted to. He said, I just couldn't do it.
Interesting.
And then we talked about the time, and he told me from the time he saw it to the time where it got to where it was at, to the time it took off. And there's a gap. There's a 10 to 12 minute gap in time that he can't remember. He doesn't know where it went. And I've done a few follow-ups with him. He still is baffled by that. I've done the whole, hey, just checking on you, see how you're doing, and is there anything strange happening? And he's like, no. He said everything's been fine. He said, but I still to this day cannot remember where that time went. So that one actually happened in September this year.
Very interesting. Now, James has a couple questions to ask you. James, go ahead and ask Les some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah. Les, how about some of the kind of unknown, not super